What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Mandi Ellefson of Hands Off CEO. You can check them out at handsoffceo.com. Mandi, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. Greg Hickman, he's been on your podcast, actually.
Yes.
Great episode with Greg. He shared his interesting journey in the service-based business world, and from big agency to his own agency to just helping agencies. So that was a good one. Also, Jason Swank talked about how he built his agency to over 8 figures and sold it, and then how he has been buying agencies. Also, Ian Garlic, who I know you know also, he talked about, he's videocasestory.com, helps people create video case stories. And he talked about growing up in an entrepreneur household. And I love this. One of my favorite stories from it, there's so many, it gets the creative juices flowing. He talked about how his dad had a restaurant with live dolphins in it. Okay. Now he lives in Orlando, as you know, that would, be kind of strange, but this restaurant was in Wisconsin and it had live dolphins, which is even stranger. So just some unique things. And Mandi, you talk a lot about this. How do you make yourself unique so you stand out from everyone else? So that stood out. Check those out, many more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So, Mandi, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, and most importantly, run their business, hopefully in a hands-off CEO way. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, and I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should, just like Mandi does. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Mandi Ellefson. We've known each other for a while. She went from $175,000 in debt to multi-million-dollar status by revolutionizing consulting agencies. So through Hands Off CEO, she rescues agency owners from the daily grind and helps transform them into million-dollar agencies into self-sustaining enterprises. And so with her expertise, she's boosted hundreds of agencies to millions in revenue, attracting premium clients who are willing to pay 50 to 600% more from their fees. And she also wrote the book. Check it out. The Hands Off CEO, Triple Your Fees and Profitability, Scale an Exceptional Consulting Agency that Grows Without You. Mandi, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. It's such a pleasure.
We'll talk about your origin story, because what's interesting about you, for my research, I'm like, so how'd you go from majoring in geological sciences to what she does now? But just take a second and talk about Hands Off CEO and what you do.
Yeah, great. So Hands Off CEO, we help service-based companies, B2B service-based companies, be able to free up the time to work on the business and be able to scale in a way where quality increases or profitability increases and where the company can actually run and grow without you. So that's in a nutshell what we do. And we work with companies that want to scale from 1 million to 10 million and beyond. And that's in a nutshell what we do.
And if you're watching or listening right now, there is a video. We are on her website. You can see Hands Off CEO here, and so you can poke around. I'm curious the evolution of the niche for you. Like right now, you're very specific on who you work with, who you help, how you help them. Talk about the evolution of that. Was it always that way from the beginning, or did you kind of figure that over time?
I think it's a little bit of both. We chose this market because I had an agency before, so I understood the challenges in the market, and I actually had this problem. How I started this company was that I started this consulting company by accident, actually, because I had this problem, and really what I was doing was I was looking at, I was doing testing and research and interviewing people to understand what the problem was. And I knew that if I understood the problem better, that I'd be able, and I could help other people solve the problem, I'd be able to solve the problem for myself. So just because it's one of my skill sets is problem solving. So I knew if I could solve their problem, I'd be able to figure it out. But before I knew it, people started saying, "Hey, can you help us do this?" And I had a company that came off the back of that. So that's pretty much like the back end of how that got started and how we chose this market. But and I can talk a little bit more about what led to that next after, if that would be interesting. But the biggest thing is that we chose this market because it's who we could do our best work with. And I started this from the perspective of not coming with I didn't come with a skill and saying, "Hey, who wants the skill?" I came from which is what a lot of agencies do when they start their company. A lot of services, I have the skill, who wants the skill? I came at it from already solving the problems. So I only wanted to work with companies that I knew I could solve this problem for. I mean, at the time it was just me. That we have a whole company now, but and you know, and I also had, this was 11, 12 years ago, and you know, I had a nice large helping of imposter syndrome, which was I think is a really good, healthy thing to have when you want to really stand by results within a company. So how I offered services is like 100% happiness guarantee. I guaranteed results, and if you didn't like it, you could have your money back. That's how I started my other company as well, and I find it's a pretty effective way to be able to break into a market. It's not the best way you want to be doing the business long term forever. You have to be pretty careful with how you do guarantees and all that. But what I found was that it's who we could deliver results for consistently, and I knew every single time we could get them results. So that's how I chose the market, and we've just gotten more and more fine-tuned in who we can deliver the biggest results for, what problems that we're solving. So to answer your question,
as you said, explored it, interviewed people, talked about it, what did you find was the problem? Because I'm sure it got shaped over time as you talked and helped more people.
Yeah, well, I found out that I was not the only person who was having this problem. And what I found out was that, and what I've continued to find is that CEOs get stuck in the day-to-day for a number of reasons, but the most common one you'll hear is that I just can't find good people. That's oftentimes what they'll say, but it's actually the deeper rooted issue is something a lot bigger than that. Because the reason why they can't find good people, and this isn't always the case. I mean, you might have really great people, but it's a matter of, like, they're good doers, but they're not good strategists. They're not thinking at a higher level. Like, they're not helping me grow the company. So we get to a certain point where you can't grow the company without having more leadership in place. And one of the reasons why that happens is that the business model is not set up in a way where you actually are scaling something that actually can be scaled. And let me share a little bit more what I mean by that, if that would be useful. But it doesn't scale because there's not enough profit in the model. There's not enough cash flow to be able to pay good quality people. So what ends up happening is that there's this entrapment cycle that we see happen. And if you're on the homepage, you could scroll all the way to the bottom and it shows a little bit of an image of this actually. That's the entrapment cycle right there, where you start with sales growth that happens and your team gets overwhelmed. The CEO gets pulled into it and you're looking at, you're going through, yeah, that's just a freeze frame, but you're looking at going and hiring, and then you have to choose between hiring and choosing profit or quality. And your company has to be profitable. So you end up having to hire the level of people that you can afford within your budget. And then you end up having to do or redo some of the work yourself. You're pulled into it. And then, meanwhile, as you've been working in the business, the cash flow drops. You go back to working on the business. You wait for the cash flow, the cycle to catch up. And then sales happens, and then the whole cycle happens all over again. So this entrapment cycle is pretty hot and heavy in service-based companies.
Is this what you experienced?
Oh yeah, I've totally experienced this. Yeah, and not just early on. You can experience this at different stages in the company too, because what happens is you can stabilize the whole company, and then you take it to the next level, and now it destabilizes it. You've got to build all new systems, and everything that worked before does not work at the next stage. So you can find yourself in this cycle at different stages. Pretty much when growth plateaus, this is oftentimes the cycle that you're seeing yourself in.
We were talking before we hit record, and you talked about this slump people hit, right? The 7-figure slump. And people come to you, they've been stagnant maybe for like 2, 3, 4 years. What are some of the causes of that?
Well, to put it simply, it's the cliche, they're working too much in the business and not enough on the business. They're all aware of that. They know that. I know it. Everybody knows they need to work more on their business instead of in their business. But how do you actually do that? And with a service-based business, what we found is that you have to be able to break this entrapment cycle. And the way you break this entrapment cycle is you change the problems that you're solving. You get really clear on what problems you're solving and for what client type, not just for the industry. Most people, they niche down on an industry. We're going to go do SEO for chiropractors. Now, that's great because and I know you're a chiropractor too, right, Jeremy?
I'm intimately familiar with that.
Okay, so here's the thing: is
I would recommend someone not do SEO for chiropractors, but yes, keep going.
Okay. Right. I don't know that would be the best niche or not, but
no, I'm hearing you. Yeah.
But that's useful in a way that you're niching down and you're going after one type of market, and doing SEO services for that gives you some economy of scale. It makes it a little more scalable, right? And you can position yourself a little bit more because you specialize in one market, but you're still just peddling what you want to sell, not what they want to buy. Because what they want to buy, what chiropractors want, is they want more patients in the door. They ultimately want more growth for their company. So when we look at at creating an irresistible offer for the right type of client, that profit sweet spot client, that's where you can look at it and say, how do we be able to scale our company in a way where we can deliver the very best results, where we could be working with the type of clients that are the easiest to generate results for, that we have a track record of generating results for, or maybe something similar. Like there's a lot of variables within a company that you could say, well, we're better at B2C, we're better at B2B, we're better at high ticket, we're better at lower ticket. So there's all these variables that you can look at when you're when you have a service-based company, and understanding who gets the best kind of results and under what conditions. That helps you uncover what that profit sweet spot client is. That power of one's the one problem, one painful problem, $1 million problems. We like $1 million problems to solve. And one profit sweet spot client and one outcome. Again, it's an outcome. It's not like we're going to drive more traffic. We're going to drive more organic SEO traffic. It's like, because here's the thing is like, well, what if it's all this traffic from India? You're driving traffic, but is that going to do them anything? No, actually, it could make the business worse off because you've gone and spent all this money on something that doesn't work. So it's looking at selling what your customers actually want to buy.
We'll talk about, you mentioned irresistible offer, so I want to talk about that. But I love what you said about a couple things, obviously having one outcome, figuring out the exact solving the $1 million pain point, whatever that is. And you mentioned also having a strong guarantee. And what's cool about that is it almost forces someone to choose the right client. Because if you have a really strong guarantee, like you said, like I'll give you all your money back or whatever, you are going to bet that, okay, I better deliver for this client. That means I have to choose the right client to deliver to, right? Because I find some problems it's just the wrong type of client, right?
Absolutely. And it's the wrong type of client. And this is a system of a symptom of not having a predictable lead source. I mean, it's a great example. You guys at Rise 25, what you're doing with the podcasting and the partnerships that you're helping your clients create, that's creating a consistent flow of ideal clients. And what that allows you to do is you can cherry pick the kind of clients that you want to work with, and instead of just taking on whatever shows up at your door. And a lot of companies, they have grown their company by just taking whatever sad deals show up on their door. And when business is really good, they say no to those. When business is not so good, the company starts getting filled up with where they can get to a point where 80% of their business is not ideal clients. And they need the cash flow. They got to keep it going. But the problem with that is that you don't really know what you're good at. That's part of it, because you're like, well, what kind of results do you get for your clients? Well, it really depends. Well, it depends on, but what does it depend on? It depends on the client, on where the client is coming already, their cash flow. It depends on their profit margins. It depends on how many people they already have on their team. Depends on their industry. It depends on all of those things, right? But you actually have control over those things. You can pick and choose which clients you want to work with, which takes a very intentional way of scaling. But imagine how much easier it would be to scale if you were only working with your most ideal kinds of clients. And if you were saying, I'm going to use that chiropractor example again. If you wanted to, if you were going to go and instead of offering SEO services to a chiropractor, you're saying we are a growth partner that helps chiropractors go from one office to 5 offices over the next 3 to 5 years. How much more can you charge for that? Well, what our clients find is they can charge anywhere from, on the very low end, 50% higher, up to on the higher end, 1,000% or higher. 300% is a pretty median number, but we have clients that have $1 million offers from this now.
Let's talk about the irresistible offer. If you're watching the video, you can see here the Scale to Freedom process. We're on Hands Off CEO, by the way, in the services page. And month 1, hands off growth roadmap, accountability structures. So in this case, we're kind of skipping to month 3, 4 here, but let's talk about Mark for a second and give some examples of irresistible offers. Right.
So, well, let me share about Mark. He actually already had a nice niche in the banking space. So a lot of our clients aren't really sure. They have a lot of industries that they're working with, but in Mark's case, they actually already had a niche. But most of our clients may not have a niche. So, but a lot of the business was coming through his network. It was coming from his speaking. So what would happen is that they would bring on these clients, and the clients always wanted him. They always wanted to work with him. So you can imagine that's a pretty difficult business to scale. especially as you're building up your team. He had a good team, he had good people, but the clients wouldn't trust them. So along comes COVID, and now the banks that were willing to invest the $20,000 to $30,000 packages, the individual packages, that were tying Mark into the business, they said, we're not doing that anymore right now. We're stopping all spending. So Mark now was a lot more open and willing to look at this from a different angle. And what we looked at is like, well, what do these banks actually want? These small banks and these credit unions, what do they want? Well, there was some very specific granular KPIs that were really important to these credit unions for as far as like the amount of deposits made, and things that were very specific to their industry that they cared about. And we looked at, like, if you did your very best work, they did branding, right? Branding is like, what is that branding, right? So a lot of companies in branding space, I see this a lot. And I actually have a branding background myself from my previous company, but branding really encompasses a lot of things, or at least it did with Mark's company. They were helping on the sales side. They were helping with customer service engagement, and they were helping with, they were driving a lot of really important impact for the company, but just were not articulating it in a way where the banks really understood it well. That they really
were they
got
articulating kind of more features than benefits type, like?
Yes, there's features, there's benefits, and then the next step beyond benefits is actually the outcomes. So like if we looked at it and we said, what is the very best result that we could do for these banks? And when we looked at that and we bundled, and if we created a pathway and we looked together at the services and we bundled them together in such a way that they could do their very best, most impactful services. Now they go from, we're not spending $20,000 to $30,000 for these individual services, to, okay, we'll spend $120,000 on this. And
because they're talking about an outcome, like, oh, if you get me that outcome, I'm happy to spend whatever amount of money.
Right. And it was all about looking at it from the client's perspective and offering them a vision that they couldn't even see themselves. They thought that they just needed to hunker down, but he showed them a pathway and a way for them to actually create growth from it. And this is the opportunity that we have with our clients, is that when we come as the experts, not just the experts to answer questions that they bring us, but the experts to be able to show them a whole new vision for their company, for their lives, they didn't even think was possible. And when you do that, clients will pay a lot more than they even realize they will pay.
In that situation, really the foundational piece was that irresistible offer, but then that relates to the pricing part.
Right. So the irresistible offer, the way that they packaged it in such a way where their clients could see they were willing to invest in a long-term solution. So what they actually found, Mark found that they were actually able to increase profit as they were scaling. He thought that was going to go down, but he had that actually increased profit even as they were hiring more team. And what that actually did for him is now instead of having these one-off projects that he had to go and like upsell to the next thing because he would have to be involved in it. Now they have longer term relationships, he would call them retainers, but these longer term relationships that allows them to actually project out their cash flow months in advance, what allows them to be able to hire more people. It allows them to have predictability in their business. And what it actually did is it allowed Mark to be able to step back from the business. So him increasing his fees 600%, or he commanded 600% higher fees, it allowed him to actually be less involved in the business.
So we talk about, we're going to jump around for a second here, but the irresistible offer. Thanks for sharing that. That's really helpful to think about, because when I think about it, it's like some people are just talking about features. Some people are talking about benefits. You're talking, okay, go from benefits to outcomes to painting a greater vision, which basically is the foundational stuff. I want to go to the first part, which is the growth roadmap, because you talked about a lot of companies stagnate and they come to you stagnated. And I know Tom talked about this in your book.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about Tom for a second and how that relates to stagnant growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom Shapiro, he actually wrote the foreword to my book because we've had a great relationship over the years. He came to us at a place where they'd been stagnating for 3 years. And the thing about a lot of companies is they actually don't realize they're in stagnation because they're not actually looking at the trends over the years and saying, oh, wow, you know what? We have gone up and down growth the past 4 years. Profits have gone down. Like they're not noticing that, but he was aware of that. He was aware that what happened is that they scaled up to a certain point, and what was happening is that if he wasn't in there hands-on every project, those projects just didn't get the same level of results. This is something he shared on our podcast. He just was, they were, the clients weren't as happy. So as a result, he's like, I can't grow a company like this. So he actually scaled back his company a little bit because he wanted to feel good about the results that they're providing for their clients. But even with scaling back, what happens there is now he actually has less bandwidth because you can't afford as many people, right? When you scale back. So what ended up happening is him scaling back actually meant that he was working more hours. So he thought that scaling back would actually make it better, but it actually made no difference at all. So and actually made it worse. So after going through this and finding that he was working, well over 50 hours per week, he came to us and said, what can we do here? So we took him through this hands-off growth road mapping process. And we walked him through our 42-point scalability assessment, and we looked at, what's actually going on in your business, and how do you be able to break free from this? So we helped him be able to find some opportunities within his business. And at this stage, this is where we help our clients be able to find 10 extra hours per week to focus working on growth. Because here's the thing is that if you're already working 50, 60 hours per week, like, how are you going to work on your business? We could tell you what to do all day long. You already know what to do. You actually need to be able to empower to do it. So that's what we do is we help them find that time, because this takes some time. Scaling takes time. It takes changing the way that you're operating within your team. It takes revamping your offers so that they're more profitable. But within this process, we helped him find the opportunities where he could be generating more growth with less impact. And so then we started rolling these changes out into his company. And what happened was, very shortly within this process, he actually had a family emergency where someone close to him and his family was, he had to just drop everything and run to the hospital. And that's what it looked like. And he was out for almost an entire month. Now, keep in mind, for the past 3 years, like, the business would have been in a really bad situation if it wasn't for the work that we had done to help him be able to get the right leadership in place so that they actually could step it up. So they were able to step it up while he's gone. And, within a short amount of time, even with him being gone for almost a month, they were able to double growth. They were able to double growth after 3 years of stagnation. And this is really what comes down to is having the right people in place and also having the right the right profit margins in place to be able to hire those people and to be able to have the right offers so that you can actually scale it too.
They all kind of go together. Talk about the leadership piece for a second. And I don't know if that relates to kind of the accountability structures, but what are some of the things that you have found that helps with putting the right leadership? Like you said before at the beginning, people say, I can't find good people. So what are some things that you found help with finding the right leadership or even building leadership within?
So first of all, I want to just share something that may feel a little controversial, but I know that I've certainly can say that this has applied to me in a big way. But if you look around at your team and whatever you got on your team, the level that your team is the level you are as a leader. So if you want better team, you need to have a better vision. If you want exceptional team, you better have an exceptional vision, because they want to come for a lot more than just a paycheck. And the people who want to just come for a paycheck, they're the ones who are they're not going to give it their all. And if you want people that are really bought into your mission, you have to have a mission. And so you have to start with leading by that. And that's where a big piece of that vision is, who do we want to be in this market? What are we taking a stand for? What kind of problems are we solving? And because that is a very big part of the vision there. And that's one of the things that we walk our clients through in the irresistible offer, that as a byproduct of that helps them be able to expand their vision. Because now when you look at it, and I'll give you an example here with Jamie, when we walked through the irresistible offer process, he got such a jolt of energy from seeing how big of impact that they could make for their clients. They went from doing affiliate marketing to, we're a growth partner that helps beauty and skincare brands be able to add $10 million in 3 years. And they actually guaranteed that. Guarantees aren't right for every business, but those type of business, it's not right for every kind of business, but there are safe ways that you can use them. But that offer, what it did is that it allowed them to be able to double their price points. They doubled their lead flow with the same exact channels they were already using. And also they were talking to prospects. They actually got referrals from prospects to other people. So that now he has this whole business that he is rallying the team around this new vision. And what it allowed him to do is it allowed Jamie to show up in a whole new way, where he was able to take a whole year worth of work and be able to lead his team to get it done in a quarter. That's what he shared on our podcast. So it starts with the vision, what it is that the impact that you're making in this market. And when you are clear on that, when you're clear on what your actual offer is, now you can actually hire people to implement that for you. But without the vision, what do you want them to execute? What are you having them bring to life? They can't read your mind.
No, I love that. Because people always, I've heard many times, is vision, mission just kind of fluffy stuff you do because someone says that's what you should do?
I think that's how most people approach it. I think a lot of people approach it that way. Maybe most isn't that. I think a lot of people intend for it to be more than that. But when you look at the real execution of it within the company, is the company actually living its mission? I certainly know that there's been times in the business where we have not been, I want everybody else to be living by the vision and the core values. And I find that those are parts that I'm not living up to. It's one thing to set a vision, but it's a whole other thing to live it.
The other thing, Mandi, we talked about was typical growth methods. Typical growth methods that can trap the CEO. Right.
So the typical growth, it comes back to that cycle that I was sharing about, the entrapment cycle. So that's the typical growth. And what ends up happening, and if you happen to find the slide on there further on, it shows how it impacts the income growth. Yeah, you had it right there. That's right there. 352. So what ends up happening is like there's that blue dot on the screen represents the amount of time that the owner is actually willing to spend in the business, and that's where they're at right now, and that's how much money they're making. The green dot represents, and if you saw the slides all the way through, there's a better animation for it, but the green dot represents your growth goal. So what ends up happening is that the only way for you to be able to get from that blue dot to the green dot and to be able to increase your income, if you're seeing on the graph, it's showing that the income is increasing, is to work more and more hours. That's what the entrapment cycle does, is that it forces the CEO to work more hours. So you basically have a time for money model. It's just a few seconds before that if you're looking at that. But you have a time for money model if you have that entrapment growth model. And so that's the typical way of growth. But it's the problem is that that's not scaling. Growth means that you're generating more growth with the same level of resources. And when you grow that way, you actually can find that profitability will actually decrease as you continue to grow. But what we want to do is actually be able to go into the scale mode, which is a different type, which requires you to step into a different space. Like when we're talking about that 7-figure slump, this is what's going on here. You actually have to step into a different, there is a growth stage that you have to step into, and you need to move from the place where you're playing the monkey in the middle game, and you're throwing the ball at everybody, and everybody's throwing it all back to you. And right at you, where you have to catch all the balls, where you actually to moving to a place where you have a professionally managed company, right? Where you have a manager who's actually running the day-to-day without you, and where you're putting in place a level of structure that will allow you to scale with a team and be able to get work done through others, but then allow leaders to get work done through others as well. And that's the point where you can scale, but there's a transition point. And where we see within that transition point, a lot of times there's an invest ahead stage of this. That's one of the things. You kind of have to invest ahead at this stage and really have a very compelling vision. Without the compelling vision, it's pretty hard to invest ahead. And but you don't need to invest ahead at the same level as you might think. This is oftentimes a stage where people will give up equity, and they maybe bring on a partner because they can't cash flow this in their company. So what we have found is the easiest way to cash flow this in the company is to change what you're selling so that generates the profits so that you can scale. And that way you actually have a sustainable business that actually can scale itself with its own income.
Mandi, thanks for sharing all this. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this. This is a lot to think about, and there's so many subtle things that are really important. So thank you for laying it out so clearly. I have one last question. Before I ask it, I want to just point people to check out handsoffceo.com. You can check out the book that I mentioned called The Hands-Off CEO, Triple Your Fees and Profitability at Scale. Last question, Mandi, is I'm just curious, some of your mentors throughout the years, it could be distant mentors, meaning a book that you love, or it could be just a colleague mentor that you've learned from throughout the years. What are some of those resources, whether it's distant or actual mentors?
Okay. I've got a few books. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, I really enjoy. That's one you want to listen to on audio. I know we were just talking about how much you love audiobooks before we started. And that can help you with the human aspect of scaling, because there's a system and then there's a mindset around it. And unless you get both of them right, the systems are worth nothing. And in fact, the mindset is way more important than the system, because if you shift the mindset, then you will be able to generate the result without knowing how to do it, because you just will naturally figure that. I know this because, 12 years ago when we started this company, I didn't know anywhere near the amount of I didn't have anywhere near the amount of skills in the systems as we did now, and we were able to create really big results then, is because we were able to shift the mindset. We were able to figure it out together. So that's one book I really like. U Squared by Price Pritchett. I'm holding this book up. I love this book. It's probably the book that I share the most. And it's a really quick, short read about creating quantum leaps. And I'm a big believer in quantum leaps and standing in the future and creating your reality from a future state. And then just looking at, well, what is so? How do we be able to create that? So those are a couple of them. I can give you some more, but does that
if you have a few more, I have
okay.
Audible credits. Keep going.
How to Win Friends and Influence People is probably one of my favorite books on leadership. It's not positioned as a leadership book, but it is a phenomenal book on how to be able to move people. And that is a really great book that I quite enjoy. And
I'm trying to bribe my daughters to read that. I don't know, maybe that's a bad method. I'm like, I'll pay you $10 if you finish this. I think I'm.
Oh no,
they haven't. Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I totally bribe my daughters to read things, and there's a teen girls version of that book too.
Oh, there is. Oh, okay.
Yes, there is. So
there's a teen girls version of that book.
Yes, I bought it for my daughters. I'm not sure if I think
it's not by Dale Carnegie. It's a different.
No, it's by it's by a Carnegie though, like one of the people.
Oh, I'll check it out. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So those are some of the books that have influenced me a lot that I would reference quite a bit. That's just the top of my mind right there.
Yeah. No, I love it. Any mentors in your business journey?
Mentors in my business journey.
Yeah.
It
could be groups too. It doesn't have to be mentors.
Right.
Groups.
You know what? I earlier stage of my company, and this was some years back. I worked with a man named Adam Urbanski. His company is Millionaire Marketing. Was it Marketing Millionaires? I think that's called. And he's this like really brash Polish guy, and he taught me how to become really good at sales. So I have to hand that to him, and he's the kind of mentor that would just like smack you upside the head if you needed it. And just didn't mind just telling you how it was, but it was also really compassionate too. So that's definitely someone who's helped a lot along the way. Sue Watson is someone that has been a long time mentor for me. Maybe a good person to have on the podcast too, actually. And a big believer in breakthroughs. She's very good at breakthroughs. So that's another person who is who I've definitely have a great deal of respect for. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Mandi, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Everyone check out handsoffceo.com, more episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mandi.
Bye.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like $100 grand.